our school sits in an area of massive deprivation in London. We were highlighted by Ofsted as a school that there was an oasis of calm, and I think one of the reasons that we are an oasis of calm is the work that we've done on values. I think some of our families, some of our young people come from homes that they don't have family values that we expect. So I think it's our job to give them that, to act as parents, to act as people who give opportunities for these young people to just be amazing. And I think that's what the values actually do with our young people.
My name's Neil Hawkes, and this is...
I'm Jane Hawkes.
And together we've been working on something called the inner curriculum. The inner curriculum, we believe, is something that's going to transform education because it allows children to be in touch with their inner selves. You all know, of course you do, that there is a school curriculum. The school curriculum means everything that you deliberately do in the school. Of course, there's an unintended curriculum as well. We believe the school curriculum is great, and that's why I wrote this book, From My Heart, Transforming Lives Through Values, because it showed how schools can look at the whole of their curriculum and develop a values-based school. Jane and I then thought, well, let's go a little deeper. And we took our thinking into what we now call the inner curriculum. And we produced a book called The Inner Curriculum, How to Nourish Wellbeing, Resilience and Self-Leadership. I do recommend, if it's possible, that you have this book and give time to reading it, because our presentation can only be a certain length, and this book will really help embed the ideas we're going to talk about. We've also produced for you some notes, the Inner Curriculum Teacher's Notes, which will be made available for you too. These notes you will find to be very practical in nature, giving you lots of ideas of what to do in the classroom and school. The inner curriculum, Jane.
Yes, well, it says on the slide here, how to create harmony in our inner world. And it's something I'm incredibly passionate about, is looking at how do we all flourish and live from our authentic, wonderful selves.
And of course, all that leads to self-regulation. You may be a school that is worried about discipline. I'm a former head teacher and I was always concerned about maintaining good discipline, but I had a different take about discipline. I believe discipline comes from within us, and that's why the inner curriculum is so important, because it encourages us to take control of ourselves. The inner curriculum begins with you, the adults, not with the children or pupils. It starts with you. We find that values-based schools evolve because of the quality of the inner world of the adults. You're seeing on screen the CEO of values-based education, Bridget Knight, who's the head teacher of a school in the UK.
Okay, so what is it that we include in an inner curriculum? One of the things that I became really aware of is that teachers have a phenomenal knowledge about children and how they develop, and yet we're often looking to the specialists when maybe children were struggling in school. And I wondered, what would it be like if we could support all the educators with a little bit of extra knowledge, so that not only can they be aware of their own inner world and feel more comfortable with themselves, but also to really support children in understanding who they are at a deeper level. And we're going to be looking at the knowledge, the skills and activities which help us to be more aware about our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions. And we have some young people doing a little mindful activity, and what we thought about when we thought about the inner curriculum was, what would it be like if we bring together the fabulous experiences that good education already has, the knowledge of the interpersonal neuroscience that's sort of flooding our world at the moment. Over the last 20 years, we've learned so much about the brain, and how are we helping young people and ourselves understand about our brain. And then there's a lot of knowledge in the area of psychotherapy, which is my professional background, that I feel is really relevant to people working, for all of us working with children. It's not just to do with our own mental well-being, but there's some beautiful theories that just help all of us understand maybe why we do certain things and have more compassion when other people perhaps behave in ways that are very challenging. And then, of course, humanity's been on the planet a long time. And there's thousands and thousands of years of wisdom that I think sometimes we need to just gently tap into again. And as we go on this journey of the inner curriculum, you and each of your children will find that you too have an innate wisdom within you.
How does the inner curriculum help us? Here's a group of children in Luton, which is one of our multicultural areas in the United Kingdom, and they have been working on the inner curriculum and values-based education for a number of years. The inner curriculum helps them because it develops their self-leadership. As I was saying about discipline, what we need children and young people to do is to discipline themselves, to be in control of their internal world of thoughts, feelings, and emotions, so that they gain agency. There was a huge piece of research in Australia to show the benefits of values-based education. And one of the benefits it showed was that values-based education develops that wonderful capacity to be in control of oneself.
So, yes, what is self-leadership? Who is this self that we're thinking about? Well, we're going to use this beautiful Russian doll to help us understand. So I'm going to invite us all to think about this little Russian doll, that she represents who we are from the outside. You can see me. I can't see you, sadly. I wish I could, but I can imagine you. Well, let's just imagine that this is what each of us represents, that external person that we can all see. But I don't know about you, there are times when the external might be very, very calm, but inside there might be something else going on. And that is what I'm really curious about and want to share with our lovely little Russian doll now. So this is the person that we see, and we often make assumptions. People might think, oh yes, I bet that person is this, that and the other, but we really don't know. So as we begin to go on our inner journey, sadly I'm not decapitating her, but I have to take her head off. Oh, there's another little one, very similar. And this little one, she says, well, I represent all the parts of you that try and control your life, all the parts of you that want to make sure you do a really good job, all the parts of you that want you to achieve your best. And I work really hard doing that. And if I think about some of my managers, I would call these parts, I have one that always thinks that she's the only person that can do a job. And sometimes that can be really frustrating for other people, and really frustrating for me too, if that part is very dominant in my life. But what she's had to learn as time's gone by is that just because somebody else does something differently doesn't mean that it's not okay, and learn to be more of a little team player. But if we looked into her story, we would understand why maybe when I was very young, being the person who got the jobs right was very important in my family. But because I was very young, I didn't update the fact as I got older. So anyway, this is what we would call a manager part. But hey ho, as you know, in a Russian doll, we have more parts. Now we have another part, and this little part represents the aspects of our personality that when maybe this part is driving us very hard, I know a lot of educators really always want to do their best and push themselves and push themselves. This little part goes, hey ho, we need a rest. This is getting a bit tough. Sometimes we can call them a soothing part, a distractor, anything to try and change the nature of what's happening. Now, they can be very good at all sorts of things. They might like to run. That was definitely one of my distractors. Sometimes they might be a little bit more, well, you could run too much anyway, but sometimes it can be that they want to soothe you by drinking, or ultimately maybe even taking a lot of drugs. So in their extreme, they can cause a lot of havoc in our lives, although their intention is absolutely positive. So we need these parts, we need our soothing parts, but when they become extreme, sometimes they're not so helpful. And maybe you can think about some of your children that you work with who at times this part, it can't cope anymore, things are getting really difficult, so something happens and these parts are very reactive, they're very quick, they don't sort of think about what they're going to do, they just do it. But anyway, we have another one inside here. This is the never-ending Russian doll. And this one's getting quite small now. And in a way, that's quite appropriate, because what we're doing in a way is we're going back in our childhood, back in our life, to when we were younger. And this little part represents the very young, vulnerable you. Maybe the part that doesn't feel good enough. I know I have times when I think, oh, well, I don't think I can do that. It's too much for me. And it's coming from this little part, the part that has to try and find out it's okay. And these guys, these two that we've already met, they both try all the time to hide this part. They don't want you to feel vulnerable. They don't want you to feel shame, maybe. You know, and again, I'm sure not only in your own life, but maybe as you think about children you've known or know, that some of them may have very vulnerable little parts inside of them that don't feel very worthwhile. Now I know, and I hope that you all know too, that absolutely every human being is worthwhile. We are not our behaviors. We are something much more than that. And inside this little one, we have the true you. And I don't know how this is going to show on the screen. This is the diamond. This is the essence of you. The essence of every single one of us. And when we connect with this essence, then we know that even on a bad day when we're not doing our best, we're still okay. Then we know that even when somebody else is behaving in a way that might be challenging us, that we can have compassion for them and have an open heart towards them. So this is just a very brief introduction to the idea of the internal family system that each and every one of us carries within us. And certainly in our book, chapter 5 in part B, there is more details, but I'm just hoping it's beginning to give you a flavour of the different aspects of our personality, and all of them have a reason, they all have a story as to why they do what they do. But the knowledge that the diamond, the essence of you, yourself, is absolutely pure, just as is everybody else's who you meet. And we're going to continue this theme a little bit more in the presentation.
Thank you, Jane, for explaining to us about the Russian doll. It's a great example. So the self, let's just summarize what Jane was saying about the self. Would you like to summarize, Jane?
Yes, well, here we have on the screen, it's the essence of who you are. It's the essence of who you are. It's the uncritical you who is observing. Often we have the voice of judgment in our heads, and great, they're just another aspect of us. But when your true essence is around, it will just accept whatever is and be there to support you in maybe understanding yourself a bit more. And it is phenomenally healing and wise. It is an energy. We often talk about, if you hurt yourself, if you break a bone, You may need to have even some metal in your bone to help the bone knit together, but it's you that does the healing. And this energy not only can heal your physical body, but it comes alongside your emotional body too.
I'm hoping this is going to help really explain what we've been talking about now. The inner curriculum, in my view, helps us to attune with ourselves and others. How does it do that? Well, here's all of us. It could be each one of us as we are born. As Jane said, the essence of us is always okay. Each one of us, when we come into this world, our parents hold us and we give out this incredible self-energy, which we all have. It's that innate essence of human consciousness. But each one of us, we're born into families and in societies, cultures, and we have to soon begin to learn how to interact with other people. We have experiences. We have to learn how to survive in our own families. Perhaps we have a brother like I did who was quite dominant, and I had to think, well, Neil, how are you going to cope in your family? What do you need to do? So as we experience life, parts of us start to be activated, as James showed you in the Russian doll. I have a very strong manager part of me that takes control. When I was a little boy, I used to do the hoovering of the house because that carried favour in the family. They said, oh, good boy, Neil. So those aspects of us develop. And as we have more experiences of life, those aspects develop. So as you can see, if we were to have a limiting experience in our lives, that shuts us down, that our self-image becomes affected by that. And it's as though we get encased in all these circles. It's almost as though we can't get out. Some of you listening may be secondary school teachers. Perhaps you have young people in your classes that are really locked into their experiences. You know that in there's a great person wanting to express themselves, but they just don't show it. What can you do? What can you as a teacher, educator do to access that self-energy, that self that's within each one of us? Because as the children grow, those sense of aspects of themselves become more complex. But we can do. What's our role? Our role is to have a lot of heart. This isn't sentimental heart. Sometimes you have to have a lot of tough love, as I call it. But within yourself, you relate to other people using yourself, your self-energy. So just be aware of yourself. When you're talking to a young person, what tone of voice are you using? Are you being your authentic self, or are you using an aspect of yourself? You know, becoming the teacher and talking in a teacher voice. In values-based education, as staff, we keep ourselves intact. We are ourselves. So we talk to children and other adults in a normal, natural way. So we relate to the children by not seeing those aspects of them which might be causing problems, but we relate to them self-energy to self-energy. And what happens is that a relationship forms which is open and honest. And that is the moment when this incredible attunement happens. I've experienced it as a teacher. I hope you have. I'm sure you have. When you attune to other children, attunement is actually being in the shoes of, it's feeling how someone is. It's not trying to fix someone if they've got a problem, but it's deeply listening, deeply empathizing with someone's situation. Dan Siegel, the psychologist, talks about a young boy who came to visit. No, it wasn't a young boy, it was his own boy. And his boy was sitting around the table and they had visitors, and the boy wasn't wanting to listen to adult conversation. And Dan said to his son, he said, I really get it. I really understand that you want to go outside to play. I really have an empathy with what you're saying, but we've got visitors and we have to be polite and stay with them. But in a while, you'll be able to go out to play. So he didn't tell the child to behave and do as he was told. He actually came alongside the child. He attuned to the feelings and thoughts of the child. And that is what a really good teacher does, in my view. I've watched thousands of teachers teaching, and they're able to attune. That means going through the outer appearances and really attuning to the real person that's the child, and then they give that to you back. I hope you found that model really useful. Jane and I enjoy putting it together. So, Jane.
Yes, as we really connect to our own inner self-energy, then we, relating to other people, will invite them to also connect to theirs. And what we're looking for is we're creating these beautiful, harmonious relationships. That doesn't mean that at times we might be talking about things that are difficult, but we do it from a place where we're not overwhelmed by our own emotion. We're just holding back. And this is a lovely example of a little boy saying, I'm no good, I'm hopeless at what I do. And the teacher who's there is saying, well, let's just have a little look at your work. Look at what it was like at the beginning of term and look at where you are now. So maybe actually, you are doing okay. Maybe you are still on that trajectory, and you are okay. And this is something I have a great passion for, breathing. We all breathe. Very few of us ever think about breathing. It just happens. But I know if you haven't seen it yet, you'll be looking at the reflection training video too, which is very much will hopefully give you a little bit about breath. But here we have the example of very young children and the teacher lying down on the ground, feeling that beautiful connection that you get with the ground when we lie on it with our spine, feeling that connection with the earth. It starts to relax our bodies. But they're doing what we would call deep abdominal breathing. So they've got their little animals on their tummies, and they're just seeing as they breathe so deeply, filling their lungs with air, that their little abdominal area rises and falls, and the little animal rises as they inhale and falls back as they exhale. We know so much about the importance of breathing, and I invite each and every one of you to take a moment every single day and just connect initially with your natural breath. Maybe do it now. Just, how am I breathing? Am I breathing shallowly? Is my breath getting a bit caught somewhere? Just noticing that. And then very gently see if you can just expand your inhalation. Just breathe a little more deeply. And then consequently allow a similar, slightly longer exhalation. Certainly, if you're ever feeling that things are getting too busy, too big, too stressful, to just take that moment to pause, connect with your breath, can be literally life-saving.
And that lovely photograph was taken in a preschool in Iceland that we visited a number of years ago.
Now we're going to explore what we've termed the pause bottle. How can I take control of me? And I have a little pause bottle here. And what this does is it represents what happens when any of us get either overwhelmed by thinking, when your mind is churning, or you have an emotional overwhelm. It's as if instead of being calm and clear, we become like this, just shaking the bottle. We're fizzing. Children love this. Children love the capacity to be able to see what it's like when, for whatever reason, we become overwhelmed. And then they begin to see that with time, we actually settle. Now, our pause bottle is quite old, and sometimes you can put a little bit of oil in them, because this is just water with glitter or something that's not plastic. I think you can get plastic glitter now too, but it has a little bit of oil in it. Some people do now, just to keep the glitter still whizzing around. But it's something I think we all need, just to remind us that it's part of being human. It means that sometimes we do get overwhelmed, and we need that time to pause, to just pause, breathe, allow ourselves to settle so our innate clarity can come through again. Sometimes it can take a long time for us to settle, sometimes maybe a few minutes, but I recommend not only the children have one of these, but every adult too.
So this was a school in Sweden, and we were teaching the children how to pause and to regulate their emotions. And we came up with the word pause. Pause powers for pupils. Pause is a lovely word because it gives us the letters to help children to pause. P is for peace. So we teach children how to be still, how to go internal, how to do a body scan on themselves to see, am I a little bit upset at the moment? Am I becoming too showing off or something like that? How am I? So it gives them a check on their internal world. It's jolly good for adults too, to just do that regular check on how you are. So P is peace. How do we create a peaceful environment inside of ourselves? The second letter, A, is giving that attention to our internal world. When I'm teaching this to children, I always say, well, you know what it's like when you stand to attention, and they all nod. And I said, well, that's the same. We give ourselves attention. We're not always looking outside of ourselves, because children, unless we teach them, often live in the external world. They don't bring their thinking and their awareness to their internal. So attention reminds them of that. Then they gain this understanding of their internal world. They suddenly are aware that they're losing it. They're getting a bit cross or feeling some other emotion. And they will say, may I take a moment out, please? So this is the beginnings of self-regulation. The children are self-regulating. So you, the teacher, don't have to do all the regulating. They take the responsibility because they have this understanding of their internal world. And the reason they have that is because they are being self-led. S is for self-leadership. So you encourage all your children in your school to be self-leaders and to co-lead the school with you. It stops the them and us mentality, which many schools have, and allows everybody to be co-creators of everything that happens, the school culture of the school. And the energy that's then released from everybody is this wonderful, creative, dynamic energy, which is the energy that comes from us as people. It's that lovely energy that is creative. So that's how we would explain it to smaller children. And in the teaching notes, we have comprehensive notes for you, so you can understand how these 5 letters are the 5 pathways to understanding the inner curriculum, but I'll allow you to read that for yourself. So the inner curriculum evolves in a calm, safe, and purposeful atmosphere, which allows everyone to flourish. The self-esteem of us all, that the way we think of ourselves, should be intact in every pupil. No pupil should feel that they're not as good as anybody else. We should all be on a level playing field and enjoy each other. The point is, how will you create this atmosphere? What will you do to create an inner curriculum? I'm now going to talk you through the process of designing your own inner curriculum. You will all do things already that are part of the inner curriculum, but you need time as a school to think about why have an inner curriculum, what is it, and how should we introduce extra parts to it. That then leads to you forming an inner curriculum steering group, which then helps everybody to think about, well, what should be done in each year group? Should certain things be done across all year groups? We want everybody to be involved in the inner curriculum. So that's our design group, the IC group, that will help develop it in the school. They then audit current practice. They review what everybody already does, the way everybody behaves. What does need to change? Let's think what needs to be added to the current practice of the school to ensure that it's calm and purposeful. For instance, are there colleagues who shout? Because that's one thing that actually disturbs the inner curriculum. So we have to make agreements about how we will all behave and relate to one another. The next thing is to produce your inner curriculum, a document that is, I would advise you to be not overcomplicated. Have the main parts that you want everybody to do in school that will help develop that concept of the inner curriculum. Then you have to implement, monitor, and evaluate what's going on. And then I would recommend in a year's time, you come back and say, well, how did we get on? Did it work? What parts of our program are really going well, and perhaps what parts do we need to adjust? So that the inner curriculum is a dynamic that isn't once introduced for all. It's something that you go on learning. And as a head teacher, the staff and myself, we all were reviewing constantly our practice. It was something we enjoyed doing, looking at what we were doing and then sharing with each other how to improve. So your next steps, these two are doing yoga. Jane hasn't told you today, but she's a great yoga teacher and enjoys teaching it. And that helps with the inner curriculum. So read the inner curriculum, the book if you can, and the notes about the pause. That will all give you lots of ideas about how to develop an inner curriculum. Follow the inner curriculum process and then flourish. As a school, feel that you are flourishing and that every child, every adult is at your school because they feel motivated, they want to learn, they relate to each other well. That's what a values-based school, that's the gift of a values-based school. It leads to the flourishing, not only of the children in your school, but the flourishing of humanity. We hope, don't we, Jane, that the inner curriculum, we've given you just a glimpse, but we hope you feel enthused and motivated to take this now into your school. A last word, Jane.
Well, thank you so much for listening to us both this afternoon, well, to whenever you're listening to us. And, you know, I hope that we will meet sometime. You, Neil and I would love to come and support you in whatever ways we can, or through Zoom or whatever. You know, please do keep in contact and let us all hope that the whole of humanity can really flourish through brilliant education, which I know is what you're offering.
Thank you for everything that you do for the students, pupils that you deal with. Humanity has a lot to thank you for. Bye-bye.
Thank you.